episode 3 of the inauguration videos for the presidents. Just me double checking on a check because I don't trust these people. Anyways, let's get right into it. So we're going to do Dwight Eisenhower. Just for reference, it's this lovely looking, not serving face card gentleman. This is his chart, by the way. He is a Virgo rising with Saturn in Virgo. Which is interesting because he has the part of fortune in there. So I guess it would be his authority, not his looks for a fact. But then he has a lot of Libra placements in his second house. Then he has the North Node up here. Interesting. People with the North Node. There's a lot of presidents with the North Node right on top of their 10th house. I mean, they are a wild card and different people. Like the United States presidents, they're usually one of a kind, I mean, they get to rule the free world, supposedly. So let's just get into his presidency. First, I have this cool video that I wanted to show you all. 60 seconds, I think. And let's just play it out. That is true. Let's find out the rest of these things. So a couple things that she said there. One, she talked about the desegregation of the schools and the civil rights movement, which again, I remind you that Rahu or Aquarius is known as black people, and the North Node, is on the 10th house next to the sun. So that's one of the things that he actually accomplished. They also mentioned the economy, which is the second house. Kept thriving. He kept adding on to more of those new deals. And this is Mercury. So Mercury is ruling of the second house of finance. And then the 5th house, which is schools. One of the things that he actually did was desegregate the schools, which is literally right here in the 5th house. We got Lilith. She's obviously a force that can't be reckoned with. And again, it's in the 9th house. It's one of America's wounds, obviously, Chiron. Another thing is he had a lot of CIA covert missions or whatever that's called to fight communism, to find out if they're building weapons, which is I find interesting because the moon is in the 12th house. 12 houses are hidden enemies. Mars is like with Venus, so we build little stations around the world and stuff like that just so we could keep track of these holes. Anyways, that's a different talk. Then he kept adding on to social security and economic, like social services and stuff like that. So we have Uranus in Cancer with the part of fortune in the 3rd house. So he just kept adding on to it. That's that trine. He also built the highway systems, apparently, which I also find interesting because we got Mercury up there in the 9th house, which rules driving and walking and shit like that. And then we have Uranus with part of fortune again in that 3rd house. And then we have Mars, which is the ruler of the 7th house up here, and Venus being up here. It's like a Venus ruling the actual ground and earth that we live in, because we live in a Taurus world, if that makes sense, because Mother's Earth is in May. Mother's birthday is in May season. Anyways, so we got it up here in the 11th house. That's that big blue line that you see there. Another thing he did was appointed a bunch of freaking judges. So let's go look into that real quick. So apparently, let me show you that. Let's go into that. He appointed like 5 new Supreme Court justices. He also appointed The administration also appointed like 129 different judges for the state courts. So I found that mad cool because you can kind of see it right there. With Jupiter being in the first house technically, because anytime you have placements in the first or the fifth or the ninth, you're going to see progression within the administration, the White House and shit like that. Things to keep in mind. Also, he ended the war, or he neutralized it, which I find it interesting because Saturn is exalted in Libra. Libra ruling things being fair and even, which is a thing he was trying to do. Well, that's what they always trying to say, right? Again, Joseph Stalin died, which is a president of the USSR, which is a thing that he was also trying to work on. And I see Jupiter in the 12th house of losses, losing a great leader, right? So we got the Cold War, which was obviously slowing down, like I said, after Joseph Stalin died. So that he had to find compromise or support, figure out a way to have a peaceful interaction with them. Again, Saturn is in Libra. It's not really confrontational here. And then we have the ballistic missiles arms control, which again, it makes sense because we have Mars and Uranus making and it's honestly Uranus and Cancer would square Saturn. So which would make sense that there is a control somehow to the people, the things that the people create. And the moon was in Aries ruling Martian things like guns. So find that pretty interesting as well. Let's see what else we got in here. So then the covert mission, again, that's that moon in the 12th house. I just wanted to reassure because we saw it again here. You see the CIA covert mission to interfere with suspected communism, which is Saturn and Neptune kind of rules some scorpionic energy, which is everybody's out to get me. So he was everybody was preparing for this secret weird feeling of it's an illusion. We don't know what's really going on, but we got to keep our eye on it. So that's why they have that opposition with the moon in Aries, by the way. Anyway, so then he goes on to a lot of trips, by the way. Again, that Jupiter being in the first house, making that trine to the Dharma houses. Then he has a bunch of shit in other countries, right? So we got the canal. What is it? The capture. Then he has some doctrine here about, the U.S. accepting responsibility and security in the Middle. Under this policy known as the Eisenhower Doctrine, any Middle Eastern country could request American economic assistance for aid from the U.S. military forces being threatened by armed aggression. Oh, okay. So basically we're agreeing to fight for them, which is also interesting because he was, like I said, he's a lot of first. He was the first person to do this NATO thing, which I guess they help each other out if you're in my clique. Sounds like some gang shit to me. Anyways, bunch of crap on different countries, which I find interesting because there's a thing that I did notice is a lot of Pisces things and faraway water, seas, and Neptune is around, which means rules faraway nations again. Nothing for the fucking us. So then he went on a bunch of trips. He takes an international trips. I guess that's nice. Kudos to him. When did he start going on these trips? These trips kind of look like they're after his second presidency. So let's check on that. His second presidency has Jupiter. Is it second? Yes, it is. His second presidency. Where the fuck is Jupiter? His second presidency has Jupiter in the 6th, which is the ruler of the Venus up here in the 9th. He was traveling for work. So, I guess it's not really that much of a travel, right? And there was a lot of new contracts probably signed. Let's see what else happened. Okay. He was a modern Republican. Nobody cares about that. Then he had beef with one of the... This is a judge. I actually read into this. This is pretty cool. He was having beef he said it right here somewhere. Hang on, I'm going to find you. Oh, here we go. He says, privately, Eisenhower held McCarthy in his tactics in contempt, writing, "I despise," wow, McCarthy's tactics, and even during the political campaign of 52, not only stated publicly and privately to him that I disapprove of those methods, but I did so in his own state. So apparently he was beefing with this guy who's a Scorpio. I think that's hilarious to me. This guy is a Scorpio. Eisenhower is a Libra, which is interesting. I find that pretty interesting. Let's find out what else happens. On the second term, leaders continue resisting the desegregation. Eisenhower sought to answer the calls for stronger federal action by introducing the Civil Rights Bill. So that's here. Now we have Chiron and Lilith, which means that's why we got our rights. Lilith got us our fucking rights, because Lilith was in Aquarius, and that is basically it's uncontrollable. Lilith is the energy in the charts, kind of like Uranus, but in a different way, because it's uncontrollable by the sky. Really, like if God is really the sky, Lilith couldn't control her. He just put her away somewhere else. He couldn't get rid of her. That's his creation. So I find that mad fucking interesting. And then honestly, he was fighting with that man in his second presidency. So this is funny because when there's places in the 8th house, there's discomforts or fighting in the courts. So meaning like in their own home stations, they're arguing with each other. Like inside the house, the White House. So I find that pretty interesting. Trans is in the 8th house for them. And let's see what else they got. We got the second terms. So then he had the school board of Little Rock, created approval of. So this is about this Little Rock Central High. This is where those 9 black students were protected by the National Guard so they could go to class. Apparently that was a fucking problem to go to class. Anyways, that was 1958, which is not that far away. My mother wasn't even born yet, by the way. Just wanted to let you know that. And my grandmother was probably like 20 something years old. So yeah. Towards the end of the second term, Eisenhower proposed another civil rights designed to help protect voting rights, but Congress once again passed the bill weakening his request. Eisenhower signed the bill into a law of the Civil Rights Act of 1960s. Cause shit, 6.4 Southern blacks attended to integrated school and 1,000 black voters were registered to vote. Also, apparently, there's something called the Lavender Scare, which is something about people being gay and working for the federal employment, which that's fine. That was kind of slow. So it just, by the way, let's show you how that looks like. Again, every time Aquarius comes up, gay stuff comes up. Just find that funny and interesting. And then there's this exact square. Now that Uranus enter Leo, I find that interesting that they call it lavender. I still don't understand why they call it lavender, but I find that fucking interesting. I'm pretty sure lavender has to have an Aquarius thing. I'm gonna have to do some research. I get back to you on that. But that was funniest to hell to me. Then he had the interstate highway system actually got signed in the first one, but it didn't get done till the second one. So just FYI. And then he had like a gasoline tax. Well, fuck him. Again, see, every time there's Mars happening in the 11th house. So let's see, there's nothing going on in the 11th house now, but there was already Aquarius placement, and Jupiter is in the 6th house. So they started to work on the space program only because our enemies did. So apparently the Soviet Union, October 4th, my birthday's October 5th, shout out to me, I'm from out of this world, hello. The Soviet Union launches Sputnik 1 satellite into orbit, and 3 months later, a nationally televised test of the missile failed in embarrassing fashion. Okay, so one of our shits failed, which I find also interesting because Mars is in the 12th house. We took a fucking loss in front of the free world. So yeah, I hope that you find that fucking interesting. Which is this, again, 11th house doesn't have any placements, but we got Pluto in 29 degrees Leo, embarrassing the fuck out of us, which we got Chiron. So I find that hilarious. Anyways, Project Vanguard, which I'm pretty sure I got like a fat 401k in there, so they're not playing with my money. And yeah, so basically in 1959, the project of the first 7 astronauts, which 7 planets are the traditional planets. By the way, astronauts were announced on April 9th, which is an Aries timeline. After the second presidency in September 1958, President signed the National Defense Education Act. Yes, so he poured $4 billion into the education system. Well, let's see how that turned out. Okay, which makes it's retrograde. So, Pluto, he poured mad money. We took a lot of debt onto fixing the 5th house. That's pretty interesting. Jupiter is in retrograde. So technically, I want to say that money was allocated the wrong way because it's retrograde. So I'm just going to assume that a bitch is correct. But I find that interesting only because Saturn is in Sagittarius in the 8th house, and it was an expense of ours. Then we have environmental issues. There was blah blah blah. It became he supported the Geneva Convention, which again is a Saturn in Sagittarius. So I'm pretty sure we have to talk about or exposed our production of electricity and how much we use. And nuclear waste, which again is the 8th house. Anything that talks about waste has to be the 8th house. Thank you very much. The 23rd Amendment governing the Electoral College. Presidential electors were appointed in the states only. As a result, the District of the Columbia was excluded from the presidential election process. Several constitutional amendments to provide the district citizens with the appropriate rights of voting in national elections for presidents and vice presidents were introduced then. Long story short, basically, by granting the Electoral College, basically, yeah, they could have just said that in smaller words. So rectifying the proposal, and it became the 23rd Amendment. Extending the rights for president and the citizens residing. Well, that was pretty boring. So, yeah. Okay, had called the admission of Alaska and Hawaii. Ooh. Okay, we added 2 states. So Hawaii and Alaska became admitted, y'all, in 1959, which was his first presidency, technically. Because his second presidency happened in 57. So no, it's actually second. Oh, look. So we have the North Node, which is destiny, with Saturn in kind of the same house, but is in the same sign with Neptune. We got 2 far away islands. It was money. Wow, that is so cool. Which Uranus entering the 4th house. And you see how he's making this opposition to the sun. A square, or a sextile technically, but it looks like a square, to the 12th of Mars and that Neptune. That is so freaking cool. And honestly, we don't use there that was a waste. I mean, no offense to Hawaii and Alaska. How much money can they really generate? And look, Jupiter and Libra, that was a transaction and it happened on land. Wow, that's so fucking cool. Moon is the ruler of that IC anyways. Shout out to astrology. Okay, so that'd be that. Okay. We're gonna cut this one off. I think we're done, right? He admitted the union, health issues. Yeah, we're done after that. He just did elections. Yep. Historical. I don't care about that. I hope that makes sense. Thank you for tuning in to Figuring Out the Man. On to the next episode. Fight them.